Good morning to everybody. A beautiful morning across the state. Quite a bit of territory to cover here, but we are overall here. We're in a stretch of very, very different from last week. The 75-degree dew points are gone, at least for now, and our temperatures are actually pretty close to where they should be, maybe even a degree or two below. I did notice this morning, and this morning will probably be the coolest morning out of the next several, and certainly it has been over the last couple of weeks as well. A lot of upper 40s and mid 40s across the state with clear, calm conditions. And I even saw a couple of upper 30s in the western upper peninsula. So beginning of a hint of our seasonal change, which is really starting here just around the corner here. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But looking at last week, on the left-hand side here, much above normal temperatures across Michigan and virtually all of the upper Midwest, and certainly the Great Lakes region, departures ranging from 3 or 4 degrees in the far northwest to as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. And while we did have some pretty hot days up in the upper 80s to near 90, the real departure here, a lot of it was at night. We had minimum temperatures here running some cases above 70, and that's at least 12 or 13 degrees above where we should be this time of the year. And again, that's another reflection of that high humidity situation that we were in here for, at least a couple of weeks. In terms of precipitation here on the right, the week was wetter than normal over most of the state, especially across the central and northern lower. You can see this large yellow area here with some embedded red, 2 to more than 4 inches of rain during the last week. And that continues a pattern we've been in since, the latter part of June. There were lesser totals as you move north and south. You could see one area here just, not too far, the Grand Rapids area and westward had much less. In some cases, virtually no precip for the entire week. But area-wise, most of the state had above normal totals once again for the week. Wanted to throw this in here. Again, it's one of those statistics that you shake your head at a little bit, but remember that we started off the growing season over almost all of the state much drier than normal, and that dryness went all the way back, in some cases back into late 2020. And then the third week of June, everything changed with heavy precipitation and several events, and that has repeated itself here since. These are June through August rainfall totals, so the traditional summer season here, the 3-month summer season. The totals are on the left-hand side here, and then the percent of normal is on the right-hand side. And it's interesting to look at this, but there are this sort of this darker brown, almost an orange color here is at least 15 inches of rain. The red is 20 inches. Again, this is 3 months. And the normal rainfall for this whole 3-month period here ranges from 8 to 9 inches in the far northeastern part of the state to around 12 or a little bit better than that across the far southwest and the western upper peninsula, to give you a range. That's the normal. So again, much of the state, especially across lower Michigan, northern and then southern portions of lower Michigan, went almost doubled. And you can see that here in the percent of normal precipitation. These light blues are at least 150%. The darker blues are double. And of course, that's the time of the year when we have our greatest water needs and so forth for crops, but incredible turnaround. Again, you can't overemphasize how big a change that was to go from several inches deficit for precipitation to major surpluses in the course of just a couple months. So if it appeared wet, and northern lower, a lot of the observations we get and comments from people in that part of the state, wettest year that they've seen in a long time, and that certainly is consistent with some of these totals that you see. One more thing, if you look here, we weren't the only ones that saw excessive precipitation here in Michigan. You can see some areas to our south, over portions of Illinois, southern Iowa, and then off to the south and east over the mid-Atlantic, where the same type of thing happened with, again, 15 to 20 inches. So a very wet year and growing season in portions of the U.S. Soil moisture as a result of this still varies. There still are, the only exception, and go back one more time here, the only exception to that real wet trend, the thumb, especially the northern portions of the thumb, and then more recently here, especially western sections of upper Michigan. And those are the two areas that are still, they have never really caught up to where the rest of the state is in terms of surpluses, but have actually trended a little bit drier than normal, especially western upper Michigan. And you can see that here on this, the soil moisture map on the right-hand side. These are percentiles relative to normal. So low percentiles mean we're below normal for the plant extractable water in the top 3 feet of the profile in a rain-fed system. You can see some portions of southern lower are still a little bit less than normal, but lots of blues and greens in northern parts of the lower, indicating, again, we're ahead of normal, surpluses are there. And then on the left-hand side, this is an index which looks at water demand and how much water plants are actually transpiring to be able to meet demand. And you can see the brownest areas here, the areas with a little bit of stress going on, western upper Michigan, not surprisingly, and then portions of the thumb. But one thing to remember always about the thumb, higher quality soils here that hold more water to begin with. So it hasn't been as much an issue. Much of the observations that we've had and actually have seen in some cases, most places look really good for this time of the year in terms of moisture, and certainly can't complain based on where we started being so dry. Degree days is another real quick story I wanted to talk about, because with the last couple of weeks being very, very warm, we really piled on some pretty heavy degree day totals here. The actual seasonal totals here, this is with the May 1 start date or planting date through the end of August. We've really jumped in terms of where we are relative to normal. That's on the right-hand side here. And we now have surpluses. Remember, over the last couple of weeks, we've had surpluses of 50 to maybe 100, 150 units. Pretty typical for a lot of the last month, but based on the last 2 weeks, we've jumped. And we still have some areas in the northern part of the state that only are about 50 degree days, or base 50 degrees, above normal in the north. But notice here that there are areas in central and southern lower Michigan now where we have surpluses of over 300 units. That's a big jump, and again, a lot of that is from the last 2 weeks. Wanted to show this too. We are, again, relative to where we are in the growing season, and when we got things planted, we're in pretty good shape. We've had a couple questions. Is there any chance of getting caught here with a killing freeze before we finish up? And there's always that. It's Michigan. We're a little bit on the edge here, but the odds this year are certainly lower than normal. This is the U2U growing degree day application. The address for that is down in the bottom here. And what I did here for East Lansing, for Ingham County, I took a hypothetical 99 relative maturity day hybrid, which is pretty typical for this area here. And what I did was I planted it. I said I'm going to wait till the end of the season. I planted at the end of May, on the 30th of May, again, indicating or just hypothetically saying real late plant. And I'm also looking here with this particular simulation, I'm going to only look for killing freezes of 28 degrees Fahrenheit or lower in the fall. But what you can see with the curves here, the green line are the actual accumulated degree days so far this year for Ingham County. The purple is the normal. And what you can see was, yes, we've been above normal for most of the year, but we really jumped during August. The distance between the green line and the purple line here expanded or increased as we picked up surpluses with time. And then this dashed line here at the end, this is using normal temperatures or climatology going out into the fall and saying, well, when would we meet for this particular hypothetical 99-day hybrid? When would we reach maturity? And the answer here is, again, even with the late May planting date, you can see it reaches maturity here about the end of September. And then the big question is, well, does that come before the first 28 degree or lower temperature of the fall? That's what all these blue lines here are. These are observed over the past, and you can see most of the time that happens in Ingham County. It's in late October is the first time that we see that. And overall, again, while there is a chance that this particular crop, based on climatology, could be caught by a first 28 degree event, they're very low odds. And if you move the planting date earlier, I checked from NASS, and the statistics said, and on the 30th of May, we actually in Michigan, we had 95% of the crop was already planted by that point in time. So virtually all of it is before that. If you play that game and go back to the middle of May, it's even better. There's almost no chance, or there haven't been any instances in the past where we would see that killing freeze before we reach maturity. So that's really looking good. Again, especially given the warmth of the last couple of weeks. Well, where are we headed here? A couple more days of this very, very well, call it extended fair and dry pattern. Weather map this morning here, high pressure over Lake Superior. That's why we've had the beautiful weather the last few days. I did want to mention, if you've looked at the news this morning, the remnants of what was Hurricane Ida. It made landfall in Louisiana on Sunday, moved up very, very, very slowly through the Tennessee into the Ohio Valley, then into the Mid-Atlantic, and have caused all sorts of problems with all of the moisture with that system dumped out and heavy rain. And there's been flooding all the way from Louisiana up to the East Coast, and they really got hit hard last night. If you saw the footage, 4 to 8 inches fell in the New York metropolitan area, and of course on an urban area like that with all the paved surfaces and so forth, nowhere for the water to go. It's a real mess. They set a record in Central Park. This is interesting because we have seen this in Michigan here this year as well. 3.15 inches of rain fell in an hour last night. That was a new all-time record for the heaviest rainfall in 1 hour. And the reason I bring it up is because it was not an old record. The old record was set with the remnants of Tropical Storm Henri, which was only about 10 days ago and made landfall. That also set a record for the wettest hour. So we have seen a number of extremes with precip all around globally, but certainly here in the U.S. here, there have been a lot of these over the last several months, and this is just another one. At any rate, back to our forecast here. High pressure is going to remain here for another day or two. More fair weather. If you liked yesterday, you're going to love today. And for most of the state, probably Friday, but we do have some changes coming. The next weather system off to our west here, out of the northern Great Plains, you can see it moves a little bit closer on Friday. The important thing to, I guess, note about this, it's weakening with time. And are we looking at any type of heavy rain anytime soon? And back to Dennis's comment, the answer would be no. We have northwesterly flow aloft, and there's just not much moisture for these systems to work with. So we will see the beginning chances of some scattered or maybe isolated showers in the far western part of upper Michigan tomorrow during the day. But for most of the state, the next chance for anything, it's almost, don't even want to call it significant, but this is Saturday morning. We will see our next chance for most areas. But I would say that the best chances for rain will be in northern parts of the state. We'll call it scattered there, maybe 40 or 50% chance, and it will decrease as you go south. So maybe only 20 or 30% chances for some light showers, a light rain across the southern part of the state during the day Saturday. It's not a washout or anything like that. It will be scattered. Most areas will probably remain dry or have little or nothing. And probably the word isolated is I think a better way to phrase this. So again, next chance for most places most areas on Saturday. Sunday, looking some lingering rain in the far northern part of the state. And then the pattern shifts and changes a little bit. I mentioned northwesterly flow aloft. And that's what this one basically on the left-hand side here, looking at the jet stream, you can see the formation of a trough. This is next work week. And that means one thing, northwesterly flow, a couple cold fronts moving through, and relatively cool and unsettled weather. On the right-hand side, these are temperature departures next work. This is Monday through Friday of next week. And you can see what warmer than normal in the west underneath that ridge, and then cooler than normal for us in the Great Lakes and over portions of the upper Midwest. I think that's a pretty good bet. It also means that we will have more frequent chances for rain, and it will just be pop-up shower type of thing. Not heavy. We won't have Gulf of Mexico moisture with this because of the northwesterly orientation of the circulation, but it will be sort of a nuisance type of thing. I think probably maybe even as late as Labor Day on Monday, but more likely Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday type time frame, almost an everyday type of chance, but they will be low chances. So again, we're not talking widespread heavy amounts. In terms of what is forecast for the total for the week through next Thursday, as much as an inch maybe in far northern parts of the state to less than 1/10 of an inch down along the far south. So remember that there are a lot of difference between north to south. And I think even in the northern part of the state, that might be a little bit of aggressive forecasting there with the totals, probably less than that in most areas. And I think it'll be drier than normal for most spots here for the upcoming week. Potential evapotranspiration rates pretty close to the normal for the next week. You can see weekly totals ranging from about 0.8 of an inch to about 1.1 inches across the far south. So note that we've begun our seasonal decline downward, that air temperature is going down, the solar radiation value is going down. So the PET rates are a little bit less as well, but they are pretty close to where they should be for early September. And then in the medium range, this particular upper air forecast for the 7th through the 11th looks very much like the slide I just showed here for next week, troughing over the east. And as a result of that, you can see they have forecasts below normal mean temperatures. I think that's a good bet for much of the next 1 to 1.5 weeks. The 8 to 14 day time frame, a little bit less than this, but also note at the same time that they're going normal to below normal in terms of precipitation. There's less confidence in the precip than there is in the temperature. Cooler than normal is a good bet, but the precip, I wouldn't expect one deviation from one side to the other, or much of a deviation from one direction to the other. One last thing, there's a new 30-day or new monthly outlook, or revised for September, and it is different. Remember, we looked at this last week, and they were calling for warmer than normal mean temperatures. And the new revised version puts Michigan squarely in the EC, or equal chances. No forecast direction for mean temperatures, and guess why? It's what you just saw. So the first half of the month is expected now, because of recent changes, that troughing feature expected to be a little cooler than normal. But I would also say that this guidance also suggests that by the middle of the month or the latter part of the month, we will go back up to warmer than normal. And again, the two cancel one another out essentially. Also note, for precipitation, no direction here. This is called robbing or stealing a little bit of forecast skill here. The forecasters put this out on the 31st of the month. They knew that the remnants of Ida were headed up towards the mid-Atlantic, and it's still in September. This is 30 days rainfall total for September, and they knew certainly they want, this is an accurate outlook here to put all that bullseye in the mid-Atlantic, just based on what's fallen over the last 24 to 48 hours. But for us, again, no direction on precip. The longer term, beyond that into the rest of the fall, it still does call for warmer than normal. So again, summarizing here, lots of things we've covered here. More the same for the short term, but and the next chance for really any rain this weekend, but not probably not widespread, except maybe a couple spots in the north. And then next week, as you saw, cooler and a little bit unsettled with frequent chances for mainly afternoon and evening showers, but not anything heavy suggested, and more of the same really for the first half of September. And with that, I think I will wrap up and introduce our next week's speaker for virtual breakfast on the 9th, next Thursday morning. We've got Dr. Christy Sprague, who's our MSU Extension weed specialist, and she's going to be talking about scouting for weed escapes and management here as we move into the fall season. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Eric or to Phil. Thanks.